The laughter echoed around the lavish dining room, a stark contrast to the tight knot forming in my chest. I had always dreaded family gatherings, and this one was no exception. The long, elegantly set table gleamed under the grand chandelier, adorned with crystal glasses that sparkled like the smiles on my relatives' faces. They were a family accustomed to wealth, and I was just a cog in their shiny machine. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold that evening. Is that a business degree in your hand, or are you just holding a fancy piece of paper? My cousin Chloe's voice sliced through the air, sharp and taunting. She leaned back in her chair, a smug smile plastered across her face as her friends erupted in laughter. They were the kind of friends who had a world opened to them by their trust funds, and they clearly found my existence hilarious. I could feel my cheeks burning, the heat climbing from my neck to my face as I clenched the edge of the table. "Come on, Chloe," I managed to say, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. "It's not just a piece of paper. It's a degree from a reputable university." I hoped my voice held some semblance of confidence, but deep down, I felt the weight of their mockery pressing down on me. Chloe, with her designer handbag that cost more than my monthly rent, shrugged dismissively. "Reputable? Sure, but what does it really mean if you can't even secure a decent job?" "I mean, look at you," she giggled, her tone dripping with condescension. "You're working at a startup with actual real-life adults. Not every job can be handed down by mommy and daddy, right?" Her privileged friends roared with laughter again, and I sank further into my seat, desperately wishing for the ground to swallow me whole. This was not the first time Chloe had publicly belittled me, but it was the most humiliating. I had spent years striving to earn my degree, pouring my heart into every assignment, every group project, only to be reduced to a joke in front of the very people I longed to impress. Growing up, I was always the one in the shadows, the quiet cousin who never seemed to measure up to the golden child of the family, the one who excelled in everything and received constant praise. But this moment felt like a new low. As I glanced around the table, seeking a sign of support, I was met with indifference. My parents sat opposite, eyes downcast, pretending to be engrossed in their meals. It was as if they were unwilling to acknowledge the cruelty of their favorite daughter. My uncle and aunt, too, wore expressions of mild embarrassment but didn't dare intervene. The unspoken rule of our family was clear. Chloe was above reproach. Feeling a wave of anger surge through me, I bit back tears. I had always been the underdog in a family of achievers, expected to cheer loudly for their successes while swallowing my pride. But with every jab from Chloe, I felt that anger morph into something else, a realization. I was tired of shrinking myself to fit the mold they had created. I had earned my place, and it was time to stand up for myself. If you've ever been underestimated by family, you'll understand every part of what happened next. This thought sparked a fire within me, a quiet determination. I could no longer be the family punching bag, the one who sat back and accepted humiliation as a part of life. I was beginning to understand that while I might not have the wealth they flaunted, I had something equally powerful, the potential to rise above their limitations. The evening dragged on, filled with forced conversations and hollow laughter. It felt like hours before everyone finally drifted toward the living room, eager to sip on champagne and indulge in platters of gourmet desserts. I lingered behind, lingering at the edge of the dining room, contemplating the bitter irony of the situation. Chloe mocked my ambitions, yet here I was, on the cusp of launching my own small business. My startup was an idea born from sleepless nights and endless planning, and it was closer to fruition than anyone knew. As I stood there lost in thought, contemplating my next steps, a voice broke through my reverie. "Are you coming, or do you plan on hiding there all night?" It was my mother, her tone blending concern with disapproval. I forced a smile, masking the swirling storm of resentment and disbelief within me. "Right behind you, Mom," I replied, knowing that I had to play the role of the dutiful daughter, even amid the chaos of my emotions. I followed her into the living room, but a seed of defiance had been planted within me. The evening may have ended, but it marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with the promise of change. What they didn't know was that the laughter of my wealthy relatives would soon turn into murmurs of disbelief. As the night drew to a close, I felt the resentment toward my cousin transforming into motivation. I had always felt undervalued, but with every dagger Chloe threw my way, I realized that it was time to reclaim my narrative. I would no longer be a shadow in their glitzy world. The humiliation I faced that night would not become my defining moment. Instead, it would ignite a fury deep within me. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but I would confront not only the toxic dynamics of my family but also my own self-image. The golden rule of my family had always been wealth, but I was ready to show them that true value came from resilience and determination. As I prepared to leave the gathering, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. I would embrace this journey, no matter how daunting it felt. I was ready to step out of the shadows and into the light where my achievements would stand tall, unashamed, and unapologetic. The mocking laughter wouldn't be the last thing I heard, it would be the spark that fueled my fire. Little did I know then, this was only the beginning. The path ahead would not only challenge the family's perceptions of my worth, but also change the course of my interactions with Chloe forever. And as it turned out, the tables were about to turn in ways I never imagined. As the weeks passed after that fateful dinner, my life was a relentless cycle of humiliation and determination. Each family gathering was a minefield of potential insults, yet I found myself bracing for impact. I could almost predict the jabs that would come my way, especially from Chloe. It was as if her cruel remarks had become some twisted ritual, an obligatory performance to show her superiority. Every time we met, she would parade her latest luxury purchases in front of me like trophies, her high-end shoes clicking against the polished marble floors of my uncle's mansion. "Oh, you simply must see my new handbag. It's the latest from Prada only $3,000. She would exclaim, her voice dripping with a sense of accomplishment that felt like daggers in my heart. Meanwhile, I was navigating my own struggles, launching my startup with the little savings I had managed to scrape together. Each day brought its own set of challenges. Securing clients, managing expenses, and learning the ropes of entrepreneurship. But these efforts went unnoticed by my family. Instead, they preferred to see me as an outsider, a poor cousin playing at being a businesswoman among the elite. My parents, who had once encouraged me to pursue my dreams, now seemed to avoid discussing my ambitions. It was as if they had accepted that I would always remain in Chloe's shadow. The disparity between our lives felt like a chasm, one that I was desperate to bridge. I had to prove to them, and more importantly to myself, that I was capable of achieving something significant. One evening, as I sat at my makeshift desk in my cramped apartment, I received a message that made my heart race. It was from an acquaintance in the industry, letting me know about a small entrepreneurship fair happening downtown. They were offering a chance for startups to showcase their ideas to potential investors. My palms tingled with excitement. This could be my opportunity to gain traction for my business. With renewed focus, I poured my energy into perfecting my pitch, drafting presentations, and creating a prototype for my services. Each late night spent working fueled my resolve. I was tired of being underestimated, and this was my chance to show that I was more than just the poor cousin. As the day of the fair approached, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I shared my plans with a few close friends, but I kept it from my family. I didn't want Chloe or anyone else to belittle my efforts before I even had a chance to shine. They had no idea what I was working on, nor did I want them to dampen my spirit with their usual dismissive comments. The day of the fair, I arrived early, the atmosphere buzzing with the energy of budding entrepreneurs. As I set up my booth, I felt a surge of pride swell within me. This was my creation, my vision, and I was finally ready to claim my place in the world. My heart raced as I rehearsed my pitch, but I was determined to deliver it with confidence. To my surprise, the turnout was substantial. I engaged with potential investors, explained my business model, and showcased my prototype. The feedback I received was overwhelmingly positive. Each nod and smile from the audience felt like a validation of my hard work, pushing back against every mocking word Chloe had ever thrown my way. As I chatted with one investor, I suddenly caught sight of a familiar face across the room. It was Chloe, her entourage in tow, dressed in designer attire that made her stand out even more. My stomach twisted. I hadn't anticipated seeing her here, especially after all the ridicule she had dished out. The way she surveyed the crowd, looking for someone to impress, was painfully familiar. Before I had a moment to brace myself, she spotted me and sauntered over, her expression a mix of surprise and feigned indifference. "What brings you here, dear cousin? Are you Trying to start a little business of your own?" she asked, her tone laced with mockery. I could feel the eyes of her friends on me, the judgment palpable. I took a deep breath, recalling the fire that had ignited within me after that dinner. "Actually, yes, I'm here to showcase my startup and connect with potential investors," I replied, my voice steady. I could see the flicker of surprise in her eyes. It was the last thing she had expected. "Oh, how cute! And how many people do you think will actually be interested?" She laughed, eyes narrowing as her friends joined in with their own snickers. But instead of feeling crushed by her laughter, I felt something shift inside me. "I guess we'll find out," I said, my heart racing, but this time not from fear. I watched as her smile faltered slightly, an unfamiliar expression crossing her face. She was used to being the center of attention, not the one overlooked. In that moment, I realized that her laughter stemmed from her insecurities. Beneath her glamorous facade, there were cracks that hinted at her own struggles. I had heard whispers about her financial issues, how her extravagant lifestyle was funded by mounting debt. She was trying to fill a void with possessions while I was building something real from the ground up. As the fair continued, I focused on my pitches, gradually blocking out Chloe's presence. I could feel a shift in the air as people took notice of my work. The more I interacted with potential investors, the more encouragement I received. I was no longer just a timid cousin, I was a force to be reckoned with. By the end of the night, I had secured several promising leads. I stepped outside, breathing in the cool night air, my heart soaring with triumph. For the first time, I felt like I was reclaiming my narrative. I was learning to rise above their judgments, to carve out my own identity, and it was invigorating. In the days that followed, the energy from the fair propelled me forward. The sting of humiliation from my family began to fade as I embraced my newfound resilience. I became determined to leverage my passion and skills, and I was ready to prove that I was more than just an afterthought in the family hierarchy. With each step I took toward establishing my business, I felt a sense of liberation. Chloe might have mocked my degree, but I was starting to understand that true worth wasn't defined by wealth or status. It was about perseverance, ambition, and the courage to forge a path against all odds. As I prepared for the next chapter of my journey, I knew that the turning point was near. I would no longer be a victim of their derision. I would be the architect of my destiny, and if Chloe thought this was the end of my story, she was in for a rude awakening. As Chloe approached, the air thickened with tension. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped against her phone, and I could see the glint of amusement in her eyes. "What brings you here, dear cousin? Are you trying to start a little business of your own?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm, and I could feel my cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment. But instead of crumbling under her scrutiny, something within me shifted. I straightened my posture, the weight of her words no longer having the same power over me. "Actually, I am," I replied, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "I've been working on a startup that focuses on sustainable products." For a moment, her expression faltered. The carefully crafted facade of superiority slipped as she processed my words. "Sustainable products, how? Quaint?" The mockery returned, but I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Perhaps it was the slight difference in my tone, or maybe it was the confidence that seeped into my words. "Yeah, quaint," I echoed, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. "But it's not just quaint, it's something people are really interested in right now. I've had some great feedback from investors." The pride I felt was intoxicating, and I could see her recalibrating, trying to regain her footing as the richer, more successful cousin. "Investors, that's rich," she scoffed, but this time her laughter rang hollow. I could sense the unease radiating from her, and it fueled my determination. "I've actually been investing in my business for the past year. I've learned a lot from my degree, more than I think you realize. It's not just about the paper, Chloe, it's about the passion and the grit behind it." My words came tumbling out, each syllable laced with the truth of my experiences, the long nights, the rejections, and the small victories. Chloe's perfectly sculpted brows knitted together, and for a split second I felt a pang of empathy. The pressure of her family's expectations must loom large, just as it did over mine. But that feeling was quickly overshadowed by the thrill of standing my ground. "You might want to check your sources, though," I added, pushing myself further into this confrontation, "because I've done the work. I've been networking, building connections, and pitching my ideas. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. The crowd around us faded into the background, and I could see the curious glances of onlookers drawn to our exchange. I was no longer just the poor cousin, I was making my mark. What kind of products are you even talking about? She challenged, crossing her arms defiantly. I mean, what do you actually have that can compete with the real businesses out there? Her words were intended to belittle, but I seized the moment. I focus on eco-friendly alternatives for everyday items. The market is growing and consumers are becoming more conscious of their choices. My prototype has already garnered interest, and I'm in talks with several eco-conscious brands for collaborations. The pride that surged through me felt like a tidal wave washing away the remnants of doubt. This was my moment, and I could see Chloe struggling to keep her composure. Sounds like you've been busy, she replied, her voice a touch softer, but the mockery hadn't completely faded. But let's be real. You're still a nobody in this industry. Her words stung, but I was no longer willing to let her define my worth. Maybe, but I'm a nobody with a vision, and that's more than I can say for someone who relies solely on their family's fortune. Chloe's expression darkened, and I could see her attempting to recalibrate her response. We'll see how long that lasts, she retorted, but I could sense a crack in her confidence. As she turned to walk away, I caught a glimpse of her entourage whispering among themselves, their eyes darting between us. I felt a surge of exhilaration. I had held my ground. In the days that followed, an unexpected change began to unfold. I received multiple callbacks from investors who showed genuine interest in my startup. The momentum I had gained felt like a lifeline, pulling me away from the depths of self-doubt and humiliation. It was as if the stories of my struggles were being rewritten, each success adding a new chapter filled with resilience and hope. I began sharing my journey on social media, documenting my progress, and connecting with others who had faced similar challenges in the entrepreneurial world. The support I received was overwhelming, and I slowly began to build a community around my brand. But as my confidence soared, so did the whispers within my family. I overheard my parents discussing my newfound success during a gathering. Do you think she's really making something of herself, or is this just a phase? I could hear the skepticism laced in their words. It hurt, but I was determined to prove them wrong. Then came the fateful day when my startup was invited to present at a local business expo. I couldn't believe it. This was a significant opportunity. My heart raced with excitement as I prepped my presentation, fully aware that Chloe would likely be there, her eyes glued to my every move. As I stood in front of my booth, I felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration. The moment was finally here. I was ready to showcase not just my business, but the culmination of all my hard work and perseverance. My education, the late nights, and the battles against family ridicule had all led to this point. I took a deep breath and reminded myself that this was my time. The truth that had bubbled beneath the surface was about to erupt, and I was ready to embrace the storm. The confrontation with my family loomed ahead, but I felt an unwavering strength coursing through me. No longer an outsider in my own life, I was on the brink of revealing who I truly was. And as I prepared to present, I knew that Chloe would soon realize that beneath the surface of what she mocked lay a fierce determination, an underdog ready to seize control of her destiny. As I stood there, the dust of our confrontation still settling, I felt an unexpected surge of clarity. Chloe had underestimated me for far too long, and now, the moment had come for me to take control of the narrative. I was no longer the timid cousin in her shadow. I was the owner of a firm that could potentially eclipse her family's wealth. As the family event continued around us, the air buzzing with laughter and chatter, I took a deep breath, ready to unveil the truth. I spotted my parents across the room, engaged in conversation with some relatives. They looked up, their expressions shifting as they noticed the tension radiating off me. I could sense their concern, but this was my moment, not just for me but for them too. I had spent countless hours working toward this goal, and it was time for them to see the fruits of my labor. Chloe, I called out, my voice steady, cutting through the ambient noise. I think it's time everyone knows what I've been up to. The crowd around us hushed, curiosity piqued. I felt the weight of their eyes, some skeptical, others intrigued. What are you talking about? Chloe asked, feigning nonchalance, but I could see the flicker of apprehension in her eyes. With purpose, I stepped forward, my heart thrumming in my chest. I'm not just building a startup. I'm not just a nobody trying to make it in this world. I own the firm that's been quietly making waves in the eco-friendly market. The words rolled off my tongue with an undeniable confidence. A collective gasp echoed in the room, and I could see the gears turning in Chloe's mind as she tried to process my revelation. "What?" she stammered, the veneer of her superiority cracking. "You can't be serious." "I am," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I've worked tirelessly to establish this company, and it's time you all knew the truth. It's not just about my business degree, it's about the passion behind it. I've invested my own money, my time, and my heart into this, while you've relied on your family's wealth." The silence that followed was palpable. I could see the shock etched on my family's faces, especially my parents, who were now fully attentive, their expressions shifting from concern to pride. "What do you mean you own the firm?" Chloe pressed, trying to regain her composure but failing miserably. "You're just a little startup." I smiled, a sense of empowerment washing over me. "Little, let me clarify. My firm has secured funding from several investors, and I'm in negotiations with major retailers to carry our products. We're not just a startup, we're a movement. And I've been the financial backbone of our family's legacy without you even knowing it." Chloe's expression morphed from disbelief to irritation, and I could see her scrambling to maintain her facade. The tables had turned, and I was reveling in the moment. "Why should we believe you?" she shot back, but her voice lacked the usual bite. "Because the proof is in the pudding, Chloe," I replied, my confidence unwavering. "I've been keeping the family afloat in ways you never realized. I've supported ventures and projects that have benefited all of us, while you've been busy flaunting your designer clothes and luxury vacations. This isn't just about me. It's about the legacy of our family." The room buzzed with whispers, and I could see my aunts and uncles exchanging glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to newfound respect. It was a moment of reckoning, and I could feel the power dynamics shifting in my favor. "But what about your degree?" Chloe challenged, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she were grappling with the reality of my words. "You always said it was just a piece of paper." "Exactly," I replied, a hint of triumph in my voice. "It's about what you do with that paper, how you leverage it to create something meaningful. I've taken the knowledge I gained and applied it in ways you never thought possible." As I continued to speak, I felt the weight of shame and inadequacy lift from my shoulders. I was no longer the underdog, I was a force to be reckoned with. The fear of judgment melted away, replaced by a sense of liberation that I had long sought. "Chloe, I think it's time for you to reconsider your definition of success," I said, my tone softening. "It's not just about wealth. It's about impact, and I'm proud to say that I'm making a difference." The crowd around us was rapt, and I could see my parents' eyes glistening with tears of pride. I had finally broken free from the shackles of their expectations, from the weight of being the lesser cousin. And just as I thought the confrontation was over, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. It was one of my investors, a well-respected figure in the industry who had been instrumental in my journey. "I couldn't help but overhear," he said with a warm smile. "Your cousin has been doing incredible work. I'm excited about what's to come." The air crackled with disbelief as Chloe's face drained of color. The validation from someone of his stature was the final nail in the coffin of her arrogance. As the event continued, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had not only revealed my truth, but had also reclaimed my narrative. The journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but I had emerged victorious, ready to face the future with renewed vigor. In that moment, I understood that wealth and status were fleeting, but the respect I garnered from my family and peers was priceless. I had transformed from the underestimated cousin into a powerful player in my own right. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more stories where the underdog finally gets the justice they deserve. As I walked away, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had led me here. I had faced my fears, confronted my demons, and emerged stronger than I ever thought possible. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it.